Hello and welcome back. My guest today is easily one of the most inspirational women I know. After a tragic car accident left her paralyzed, she is now a super quadriplegic with an I can attitude living in Southern California. She's a makeup artist, content creator, and disability advocate. Over the years, she's had the honor of being the first wheelchair model for Ulta Beauty, Maybelline New York ambassador, and product testing. Brand partnerships with Revlon, Fenty Beauty, Estee Lauder, Buxom Cosmetics, Amazon, Herbal Essence, Braun, Redken, Flip Beauty, and Tarte Cosmetics. She's been featured in articles by People Magazine, Bustle, Teen Vogue, Pop Sugar, and Daily Mail. As she continues to glide through life, the future looks bright for this incredible trailblazer. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Steph Aiello to the show. Thank you for coming on. I'm so excited you're here. And I have been looking so forward to this interview with you because I got to tell you, I was on TikTok. I was having a horrible day. And I was just kind of like, when you get in those bad moods and you're just like, I'm going to numb out and scroll TikTok. And I was doing that one day and I came across one of your videos. And first off, I loved your makeup application. That's what drew me to you. But then also just like your positive energy. And then after I like completely stalked your page and found out more about your story and everything, I was so inspired. And honestly, you turned my horrible day around just by
Well,
getting
thank
to know you.
you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet. I know. I remember getting the email. I was like, "Oh, this is nice." Like, and you like had such a nice email sent to me. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do
Oh.
this." But
Well, yeah,
thank
I'm
you.
so glad because and then that right there, I was like, I have to reach out to her because like I said, you turned my day around and I would love for you to come on the show and do that for so many others, listening. So I'm super
Well,
excited.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Like I said, I found out about your story and everything, but I would love for you to start by telling the audience a little bit about your story and kind of like that tragic night that led you to where you are today.
Mhm. Yeah, I was for those of you guys who don't know, I am a quadriplegic. I'm level C5 through 7. So a lot of people try and tell me that I'm a paraplegic because I do have arm function and some finger function, but I am a quadriplegic from a car accident when I was 20 years old. I was driving home from Las Vegas and I dozed off behind the wheel, and my passenger and I overcorrected the car and crashed in the desert. And I was supposed to start cosmetology school on Monday, but this was on a Sunday, and I don't, some amazing way by will of God, like I am still doing makeup and still living out my passion and my dreams 13 years later.
Wow. And so, can you take us into like like when you woke up? Because I heard you say this in an interview, is that you kind of woke up in the car and you like could not move. So, can you go into that a little bit of like what that experience was like for you from the time that you came to in the accident and then, in those moments following?
Yeah, so my passenger was on the outside of the vehicle. This is from his perspective, like, because I don't remember too much of this part. But he said that I was begging for him to get me out of the vehicle. So I always like to stress that because this is what's so important in a moment of like, you know, tragedy and being afraid and all this trauma developing. You kind of put your better instincts out the window. So I do want to stress this, like, do not touch someone who is inside of a vehicle, wait for medical to arrive. But against his better judgment and mine, obviously screaming at him to get me out, he kicked the front windshield open and tried to get me out of the front windshield. And I fell to the passenger side because the vehicle was on its side. So the driver's side was up top. And I think that that's initially where I broke my neck because I was able to move more before that.
Mm.
Um, And because he said I was like trying to unbuckle my seatbelt and trying to get out. So I fell to the side, and I remember waking up and it being quiet and I'm feeling like afraid. This is the part that I remember, and trying to pull myself out of the vehicle. And I physically couldn't do it. I remember dozing off and waking up again, or maybe I just blacked out at the point that they cut the car open with the jaws of life and pulled me out of the vehicle. And then I got airlifted to Loma Linda, and the one thing I clearly remember was like I remember telling the medical team, like, please tell my mom and my sister I'm sorry. Like I was just so terrified. And then they put me on the plane, and then I woke up in the hospital.
Wow. I mean, I'm like short of breath as you're explaining this. Like I cannot even imagine as a 20-year-old like going
Mhm.
through all of this.
Mhm.
Oh my
Yeah, and
gosh.
I always stress too because, and a lot of the comments in my earlier like interviews and stuff, people were like, "Well, you're drunk, you're drunk." I remember being in the car and the highway patrol officer forcing me to do a breathalyzer.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, and they did blood work and everything. So before anyone comes for me in the comments like saying that, I just like to defend myself, like just because I don't like to see it. It's just it's a little rough, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's one thing I will never forget is the voice of that highway patrol officer. I don't remember what he looks like. I don't know anything about him, but I will never forget the sound of his voice, like screaming at me, yelling at me to do the breathalyzer.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, there's bits and pieces that I strongly remember, and then there's some that are like pretty vague.
Mhm.
Um, and then it was a lot of medicated therapy when I got to the hospital, where it's like a lot of bits and pieces because I was so heavily sedated.
Mhm. And this was at nighttime or was it
Mhm.
morning?
This
Okay.
was at 3 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
when this
Wow.
happened.
Yeah. You're at the hospital at this point. I want to go into what was your recovery like and, how like kind of like where your mind was, when you were in hospital starting your recovery and then like how long, what was the process like for you?
So I actually did not, I was very naive. I did not understand what happens when you break your spine or you break your neck. So when everyone's telling me, and I'm fully aware that I can't move,
Mhm.
I'm thinking you put a cast on it, you get better.
Mhm.
I wasn't, there's no like me grasping that until I came home and I realized, oh my gosh, my life has completely changed. But in the hospital, I mean, I was heavily sedated in ICU for a while, and then I went to another room, and then I believe I was in the hospital, Loma Linda Hospital for a month, and then they sent me to Casa Calina for rehab, where I was a stubborn brat because I was 20 years old and I was like, I don't want to do any of this. I shouldn't have to do this. Depression creeps in,
Mhm.
and you have this like hidden depression that everyone's telling you you're an inspiration, you're so strong, and so there's pressure of keeping that to yourself too on top of it because you don't want to disappoint people more and more and more,
Mhm.
after already what has happened to you. So that did spiral a lot in my head. And it became really worse later for me having that depression secretive, and then it just exploded.
Mhm.
So recovery was rough. Learning how to, feed myself again, how to bathe myself. And these are all things I still couldn't do leaving rehab. Like peeing on my own. I still can't do that. I self-cath, like having a bowel program, dressing myself, all of these basic like child things you're relearning as a 20-year-old. And it was just so much to wrap my head around. And then having my mom be my caregiver, I can only imagine like how much weight she felt on her.
Mhm.
And then me in return feeling like a burden. It was just a lot of like back and forth. And this is where I always try to convince people who I meet who are newly injured. And I always say, I wish there was I can come up with something clever, but it's so generic and it's so important to express, like, it's okay to not be okay. And that's really, really important for people to understand in those early ages of those early stages of being injured is like, it's okay to not be the inspiration and not to be strong. Like, you're mourning a life that
Mhm.
is yours. Like, that's something that is really hard to grasp is like you have to mourn the like your life while you're still alive. And I've come a long ways. I've done a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
And relearning how to do makeup too. So that's great.
Yeah. I actually want to touch more on that. That was actually one of my questions was that I saw it on your Instagram. You made a reel recently about the fact that you had to mourn your old life. And so I wanted you to just touch a little bit more on that. Like what that experience was like because like you said, you're still alive and you're having to not only process like the fact that you now have to let that old life go, you're never gonna be that person again, and then meanwhile, you're trying to learn how to do basic things, like, that you just do that, someone who's not quadriplegic just does without even thinking, and you're
Mhm.
having it takes you twice as long now, and you're having to relearn all of these things at 20 years old. So, yeah, can you talk a little bit about the mourning process you went through?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be unfair to me to say that I don't still go through it.
Mhm,
Like there's still days that are just really rough for me where I'm like, "Oh, my hands don't want to work the way that they could work." You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like even like grabbing a water bottle, using it two hands. I've found my normal in this life, but it was really hard to get here and to accept the fact that like my life will never be the same. I'm always going to be different. When I enter a room, everyone's always going to look, like it's just it was overwhelming. So there's so many layers to that morning because you have a little bit of like happiness that, okay, I learned how to put my pants on, but then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have to do this. Like,
mhm,
so there was like so many layers to it and an internal battle of like trying to make peace with the fact that this is my new life and learning to grow and develop mentally. But also giving myself grace to feel sad that I am 20 years old and I'm learning how to pee and poop again. Like,
yeah,
it's like if I'm being completely honest, like I'm
yeah.
very honest about this stuff. I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but this is a reality of my life. And the only way to normalize it for, people who are able-bodied is for us to speak about it in a
Well, and
way that is natural.
it fully puts it into perspective for people, I think, when you say stuff like that because, yeah, I mean, it no one can fathom, unless they go through it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of what it's like, and it still is like, it's you still have days like I think like when you lose someone in your life, there are days years later where you're like, oh, I really miss them. I sometimes really miss my abilities. I don't necessarily miss who I was back then. I think I've grown and developed and I love who I am. I'm more confident now in the body that I have now than I did before, but you still miss like parts of who I was.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. I want to go into mindset a little bit more because, in the first days, weeks, months, even years maybe after your accident, I'm sure you've not only had to overcome so much physically, but mentally. And you touched on that a little bit. So I wanted to go more into that and talk about the mindset that you've had to carry in order to get yourself through this, and like you said, you still have days. And so what is a mindset that you try to, constantly give yourself in order to get through it?
Yeah, I don't think that I actually try to give myself a mindset. I let myself feel what I need to feel that day. And I think that giving myself grace with that has really relieved a lot of pressure off of me. The pressure that you give yourself to be happy and to be okay.
Mhm,
And I think internally, like me accepting me for who I am that day has made me happier in life, is
mhm,
giving myself the grace to feel and to be sad or to be happy or be frustrated and be like, okay, well, if I can't do this now, like, let me do this. And I think like it goes back, I don't know if you've ever heard of the spoon theory,
no.
where you get like you give yourself a certain amount of spoons in a day. And that gives you grace because you're like, okay, well, I only have this much energy today. I'm going to give myself 4 spoons. So that means I'm going to get up, I'm going to get in the shower, I'm going to film a video, I'm going to go in my garden, and I'm going to take my dog on a walk.
Oh,
Like
wow,
if you
okay.
have bad days,
Mhm,
you can give yourself spoons and be like, you know what, just do this much today and knock those out. And it really helps relieve some pressure off of yourself.
Yeah, like, not every day is gonna be 10 spoons. Some days you got
Mhm.
4 spoons, like you said,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow, I like that. I've never heard it, but I do like that. S
Yeah.
You mentioned you were about to start cosmetology school on Monday, and
Mhm.
then your accident happened on Sunday. Did it take a while to pick back up and pursue your passion for makeup?
That's like a roller coaster ride. Um, uh, I was heavily depressed in the hospital and I just wanted to feel like myself. My family did bring in my makeup bag and everything, but I never attempted. And I automatically assumed if I can't feed myself, I'm going to put on mascara. And my OT picked up on that. And I was refusing to get out of bed one day. And she just came in my room and put my makeup on a little table in front of me and said, let's figure this out. And so that's what like really fired my drive again to learn how to do makeup. And it started becoming second nature. I then created an Instagram page where no one knew I was disabled
Mm,
and hiding my hand function because I was afraid of what the internet was going to say and the comments I would get. And I was already insecure. And that started growing a following. And then, like, the peak of the roller coaster was then I met Tyra Banks, and she's the one who encouraged me to make my hands my brand. And that's where I started posting videos with my hand function and became this thing that I didn't expect to happen. And I'm here now.
yeah.
But, it's like, it's so crazy because when I say that, it's like, it's not that my friends and family didn't try to encourage me that way. It's just it took someone outside of my circle
Mhm.
to actually light that fire. Does that
Right.
make sense?
No, it
Because I
absolutely
feel
does.
yeah, it's like they're supposed to say that.
Yeah.
They're supposed to encourage me, but
Yeah, you've
I
already
just
felt the love and the motivation from them. It takes
yeah,
a total stranger that it's crazy how that happens, but it is so true because I've experienced it in myself from time to time. But yes,
yeah.
exactly.
So it was just a roller coaster ride. And I'm here now and I've loved every part of it.
Did you end up going to cosmetology school eventually?
I did not go to cosmetology school because I was going to do hair and everything, and
Mm.
I just don't trust myself with the curling iron just yet. But I do use like a Dyson Airwrap for my own hair. But I did go to makeup school and got my makeup certificate. So
Wow.
and that wasn't something I needed to do. Like social media influencers don't have makeup certificates, but I just
Mhm.
needed that as a win for myself
Oh
to
yeah.
prove to myself that I am capable and I am qualified. So
Yeah, and what an accomplishment too to be able to say that. Like I went through all of this and here I am. I am a quadriplegic and I have a makeup certificate. Like that is
yeah,
huge.
thank you.
So I want to just backtrack a little bit and because I know you mentioned this a little bit when you were talking about mourning your own life and I also saw a video that you said it in a video clip that you're actually happier with this version of yourself than you were with who you were before. And so I wanted to have you explain that and ways that you've changed from where you were before the accident to now.
Yeah, oh my gosh, my whole thought process, my mentality. I mean, I think there was levels. There was me before faking confidence and trying to be that girl, like who's out at the clubs and trying to do all that, to a girl who's been completely stripped of confidence because I'm relearning even my own body,
Mhm.
to building myself up and feeling so confident in my chair. So I think there was levels to it that it really did take me hitting rock bottom to mature, to grow up, to have like an I can attitude, like it really took me being stripped of everything to get to the point where it's like, okay, you know what? Nothing is going to take on my life. Like I've said before, you know, my injury doesn't take a break so that I can live my life. So why am I going to stop living my life because of my injury? And when I had that perspective and I got that come across my mind, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to own this. You know what? And I don't care what people have to say anymore. And I'm going to be better for myself, if anything. And so I joke about it, but I'm always saying like I wouldn't be friends with who I was before my accident, because I was just so loud, so demanding of attention and needing, that reassurance of who I am from other people,
Mhm.
that now I look for it in myself, and I don't really necessarily need it. I don't know, like, we just grow up,
Yes.
like, and it took me becoming quote unquote a child again to grow up faster than when I was 20 years old.
So interesting the way that you put that. But that, wow. I mean, what an incredible story, really, yours is. Um, it, so did you feel like throughout this that you went through stages of losing friends that you had in the
Mm.
like prior to your accident, or how was that for you?
Yeah, I lost almost all of my friends while I was still in the hospital. The ones that stuck by me, I probably have like a handful. And that's about it, to be honest. Like, and even now, like I have some friends in the community, which has been great to like rely on and have friends that actually understand and like can fully relate to you. But I lost almost everybody. So I think that was hard because I felt like I was so ride or die for them.
Mhm.
And then when I was no longer that girl that was out there, it's like I got stripped from all of it. I got stripped from like even my friendships. Um, yeah, and I think when I first got injured, it's an interesting question that you asked me. I don't think anyone's ever asked me this. I think when I first got injured, I really had the whole like I don't care attitude. Like, well, screw them. They don't need to come. Like, whatever.
Mhm.
But I think it hurt me and affected me a lot more. Um, Feeling like that's another reason for you to not feel like you're good enough. And then you're not good enough for yourself. You can't feed yourself, and it was just layers on layers. But yeah, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before.
Yeah. Wow. Um, and what a shame too. What a shame. But it sounds like it grew you to who you are today by going through that type of hardship.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm still petty with it, like a little bit. Like I'm like, did you see my commercial on TV?
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, like you should want to be friends with me now
you
all
should
of a
have
sudden.
stayed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as a petty comment, I think you've had the last laugh?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. The Italian sassiness in me never goes away. So
Mhm. So, speaking of, you're now an amazing makeup artist. You're a model for major brands and you have multiple brand partnerships. So, what does the day in the life look like for you nowadays?
well, getting up, feeding my dog, and watering my garden, and then I come in here and I sit in this room and I film and I create content that I get to love and enjoy. And then when I have brand deals, I get super excited about those too, going through briefs, answering emails, talking to my manager. It's so crazy. Like I literally have a life that I could have never have dreamt of. Um, being able to work with Ulta Beauty and be the first wheelchair model for them, and being a makeup artist on set for Fenty Beauty. And it's just like, so like, I have to pinch myself a lot of the time, and I don't ever want to take any of this for granted.
Mhm.
It's just, I don't know. I couldn't ask for a better life.
That's amazing. I'm like so happy I'm like over here smiling like a kid for you. Like this is amazing.
Thank you.
So, would you say that makeup contributed to your healing and the positive energy? Like I said in the beginning, that you just have this positive, like almost like infectious energy about you. So, would you say that makeup has definitely contributed to that?
Thank you. Yeah. And like even on days where if I don't want to film, I'll come in here and I will just play with makeup, and it's not only therapeutic for my hand function, but it's also therapeutic for my mind. And I love it. It's so much fun. I get PR boxes and I get to play with new things, and it's just like I just love it.
Yes. Do you come across any challenges being a makeup artist? I mean, obviously with your hand function, sometimes I'm sure
Mm.
that's a challenge. do you have any others that you come across as a makeup artist?
I think internally, for sure. I
Mhm.
mean, when I do other people's makeup, they don't mind if I'm like, "Hey, can I put a pillow down your lap so I can lean in on you because of my balance?"
Mhm.
And they don't mind. But internally, I have a struggle with that. Like, oh, I don't want to, like, it's awkward, it's weird. But no one else finds it awkward or weird, and everyone's just like, "Yeah, whatever." So I think internally I have a struggle of like having that confidence of like being different and feeling like I have to do twice as much and twice as good to show people that I am just as good as everybody. But I think internally I feel like there's always like this battle being different, that I feel like I have to work twice as hard. So I think internally I do. I don't think outside of like me asking someone to lean on them for a second to do their eyeshadow, no one really cares.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before this, if I were in California right now, you would definitely be hired to do my makeup for me today.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So I want to move on to what is one piece of advice that you would offer someone who feels like they've hit rock bottom and that there's no light at the end of the tunnel? What's a good piece of advice that you have for someone like that?
Like I've said before, to feel it. I think it's really important to feel it. Don't like compress it down because it's always going to come back up.
Mhm.
But I think something that I used to write poetry before my accident, something that I've kept internal with myself is a line that I wrote where I said, think less of what you lost and more of what you still have. And I think that that's so simple, but like when you actually start trying to put action with that, it really puts life into perspective, because you could really have nothing, but you're like, oh, but I have family, I have friends, I have food in the
Mhm.
refrigerator, I have a dog that loves me, I have clothing, and like it puts life really into perspective. And yeah, I mean, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Fake that confidence a little bit, and then when you have that confidence and you rub your confidence on other people, they're going to absorb that, and it's going to build your confidence. So
I love that.
yeah.
Yeah. I do love that. Like, focus on the things that you have
Mhm.
and then that just fills your cup. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's so easy to get distracted by
Mhm.
things that you feel are missing in your life, but what's meant to be in your life will be in your life in that moment.
Yeah, that's so good. So, what is next for you? What are some goals that you have? Because like we said, you got these brand deals, you're doing amazing, you're an amazing makeup artist. So, what's next for Steph?
Yeah, I mean, next for me, I would love to work more behind the scenes. I currently work with Maybelline behind the scenes for product development, and help create packaging, or test packaging and formulas and stuff. And I give input from a quadriplegic standard. And I just want to work with more brands without my face being involved, and do product testing, and make things that are for everyday user, for an able body, more um accessible for my community without it being in your face.
Mhm.
And that's like, I think, the biggest goal. I think another goal that I have is to eventually not go viral for being a quadriplegic and it become normal. I think when true inclusion is when you don't go viral,
Mhm.
because you're different. So I think these are the goals that I have and that I'm putting forward. And I'm actually working with a company right now that I can't like talk of just yet, but I'm going to be training makeup artists to train people with disabilities across the states, and I think even in Canada. So I'm really excited about that. Just bring more inclusion everywhere. Just sprinkle it around.
Yes. That's amazing. I cannot wait to just watch like you I cannot wait to watch your life just like keep going, keep flourishing and like you've touched me so much and I mean I can see that you're going to go around to touch millions. So,
Thank you.
yes. So where is somewhere that where can people go and find you? On TikTok, Instagram, what's your social media?
Yeah, so I do YouTube. I'm picking back up on that. Vlogmas killed me. But all of the handles for everything is at the letter U walk underscore I glide for everything. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your story, sharing your experience, and just sprinkling your positivity around and to everyone listening to this show.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love this, and let me know whenever you're in California. We'll have like a
Absolutely.
makeup session.
Absolutely. As always, I appreciate you all so much for listening. My goal is for these episodes to at least help one person in some aspect of their life. So if you like what you hear, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe to the show, as well as follow us on social media at Inside Voice Pod. Thanks.